So, so for for the first, actually for Taiwan before the 17th century is mainly an island for indigenous people. They are different Austronesian tribes and communities in Taiwan, and only since 17th century it started to have the first immigration of the Chinese community with its Chinese culture and also Chinese art expression to Taiwan. So from 17th century to 19th century, we we will see for for the art in that time they focus more about the calligraphy, and something different about the calligraphy and ink art in Taiwan in that time because the main influence came from the south of China. So for the south of China, their way is less elegant as the one in the central government, but something more marginal, while also more dramatic and more wild, and it became the mainstream in Taiwan. However, in since the 1895, we started to have the Japanese colonization. During that time, Japan they bring the latest expression from Europe to Taiwan, especially the idea about observe the nature and also to capture the world through a way of realism. So in that time, Japan also expect Taiwan to present something more Taiwanese in quotation. Let's say they expect to see something exotic of Taiwan. So in that time for the artists, they do not only express themselves, but they also try to think about what is the exoticness of them and what they can conceal in this status. And also on the right hand side, we can see in this painting actually is a typical motif in ink art painting. However, you can also see this influence of realism and also for the style of Nihonga, or you can say the style of kind of Japanese gouache painting. It becomes also the kind of the important expression in Taiwan at that time. However, during after the 1949, after the takeover of Taiwan by Kuomintang, they started to promote again something more traditional, especially traditional ink art painting, and they also start to go back from the observation of the real world to the expression of something spiritual, of something philosophical. And also during that time, there were these two groups, Fifth Moons and also Dongfang in the 50s. They tried to combine the expression of modernism and also Chinese culture and also Chinese aesthetic. So you can see this can be something far different from the Japanese time, which focus more on this realism and also naturalism. And however, in the 1971, Taiwan or the Republic of China, as the government of Kuomintang, withdrew from United Nations, and it caused a crisis of identity because during that time for Kuomintang, their idea was to take back China. So now they knew they could no longer take back or go back to China. So they start to look what we have in Taiwan in the land. So they are the artists in that time start to be more and more aware and more interested in the local and also folk culture in Taiwan. And finally, because during the Kuomintang time was also a time of the dictatorship and also the martial law. So before and also after that period, there started to have expressions to disturb the social order as the work of Chen Jieren on the left, and also for the other artists who try to address directly about the politics and also identity finally is possible after the end of martial law. However, when we talk about those developments, there is also a character missing in this story, which is the Austronesian or indigenous community long stayed in Taiwan right before 17th century. So finally, also during the 90s and also started from the 2000s, there is kind of an emancipation and also more awareness about the indigenous, modern, and also contemporary art. So, so as a brief discussion or introduction, we can see how when you want to address the art history of Taiwanese art, actually is a contested ground of subjectivities. When you talk about Taiwan art history, what subjectivity are you talking about? Is it Taiwanese or is it Japanese? Is it Chinese? Is it indigenous? And I'm sure there is no any consensus between them. While I think the most interesting thing is all those ruptures and all those forces it can be against to each other is the most interesting thing in Taiwan art history. However, this also causes another issue because we can know for the first museum of modern and contemporary art, Taipei Fine Art Museum was founded in 1983, and since then until now is almost 40 years, and there hasn't really been any permanent presentation of the collection, and there is always this phenomenon which focus more on the temporary exhibition over the collection display. In my observation, I think it can also be related to this contested ground of subjectivities, because when those museums they want to tell the story from their collection, actually they always have this. I feel they always have this pressure. They must take a perspective of a position which can satisfy everyone. However, it's quite difficult. So I think there are still some works that we can do talking about the story of the art history through the collection, because there's a big differences between a museum which with its collection, while art center they don't have collection, they just use exhibition to present the latest discussion. So I think there is still this mission that for those museums in Taiwan, which can still focus more and to build more strong connection between the relationship between the collection and also the temporary exhibition. So as we can see, for the way about addressing the art history, the Taiwanese art history through exhibition is still more common through the artist and also group movement style chronology. This kind of this kind of way of category to present them. So later, in the second part, I would like to show different ways to engage with the collection with some cases from Taiwan. One of them is the experiment, the experiment in Taipei Fine Art Museum since 2013 with those two exhibitions on the screen, intersecting vectors and also dance with the museum collection. For these two exhibitions, they actually started to invite independent curators to engage with the collection of this museum. For example, on the left-hand side, we can see the curator try to use a way like a salon to put so many works in on the wall, and also with the color, which can resemble like the Temple of Confucius in Taiwan, and then to experiment with different way of present the modern art. And on the left-hand side, actually those work, they are not the work from the museum, but the curator try to use a way as how to categorize different things. And when those things are in the museum, it suddenly look like a part of the collection. It try to discuss, negotiate with the institutionality of the museum. Those two case studies are interesting, while I also have my concern that somehow to engage with the collection in this way can bring some whimsical aspect from the collection, while it can also have the risk to omit or to ignore the differences of all those work in its different historical and also social contexts. So for the other example I would like to address and also show is also this show in the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art in 2019 um, is is related to one surrealist poetry society called the Mulan, founded in 1933. And this group also showcased some interesting idea about identity in Taiwan because they were not really regarded in Taiwan for the literature world for a while, because during that time, their main language of writing is Japanese, while the other more radical, more activate, how to say, no, more activate Taiwanese writer, they already try to use Chinese to express their idea. However, for the Mulan, even though they are Taiwanese who write in Japanese, they still consider them as Taiwanese, and they try to use surrealism to express the world and also their view. So this exhibition tried to connect this world of literature with the surrealism in that time. Somehow for those Taiwanese artists in that time, they do not actively, how to say, actively participate in those avant-garde group in that time. However, there are also some artists who are a little bit outside of the mainstream. They still try to capture the exciting city life and also the metropolis in Tokyo, which is a kind of epicenter, epicenter for the latest art expression in the time. So this exhibition tried to bring different connection through the international scope. And the other example can also be an exhibition of an exhibition of collection in Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Art since 2019. The title is South as a Place of Gathering. And we can also see finally there is an exhibition of the permanent collection, which stay much longer time at 3 years in this case. So, so this exhibition, when they want to address the art history from the south of Taiwan, they try to use the scope of the Second World War, because in that time, uh, before the end of Second World War, Japan became quite eager to invade the world from Taiwan to Southeast Asia. So the Kaohsiung is an important military base for Japan. So this exhibition tried to bring this aspect of the war. For example, try to put the artwork in the middle as 装饰盒 to express this feeling in the war. And also the artwork in the right hand side from Lin Yushan actually express this conflict of identity, because for this work actually it was painted in Japanese flag in that time. However, after the Kuomintang came to Taiwan, he changes one the legs into the one of Republic of China in order to avoid the persecution. So finally, the right part was hidden for a while, and when he recovered this painting, is already more or less after the martial law. So the artist would like to juxtapose this painting with two flags to reveal this conflict of politics and also identity. So there are some examples of what I would like to say, different ways to address the art history in Taiwan. So as my work as a researcher in Taiwan Visual Art Archive, we have been working with Taidong Art Museum since 2002. We also start to think about beyond the mainstream national art history. Actually, when we look at the local, for example, like Taidong, you might see something you look more, how to say, more realism, more traditional, or more mature, or more craft. However, if we change our different idea, it all has its own meaning, and it can also reveal different ways of thinking about expression of art for Taiwan art history. And for example, for an exhibition in Taitung Art Museum in 2025, they also start to think about those indigenous artists who use the elements of craft in their contemporary art expression while having dialogue to more craft-like work, while those work by this artist look like traditional craft. However, she has already put her life experience into it, so it's no longer that traditional, neither. So it's a way we would like to explore more for Taiwan art history. So for the last part, I am also thinking about the possible way to connect Taiwan and Spain through the art history. And actually, the artists like Antoni Davies is very influential for those Taiwanese artists. And also, there is also this interesting symbiosis between Davies and also the regime of Franco. And actually, Franco tried to use the artists like Davies and to promote them in international to showcase the world that there are contemporary art expressions in Spain, which is as the same as the group of Wu Yue and Dongfang in 50s in Taiwan. They are the art expression of abstract art and with the Chinese motif is also the way the Kuomintang would like to promote, would like to showcase to the world that we also have contemporary art in Taiwan. So you can see this reflection while those Taiwanese artists, they learn from Davies and actually they also learn from this reflection of in the Cold War art phenomenon. So in here, thanks to the doctor degree thesis by Yiqing Pan, I can locate those artists who has started in Spain before the end of martial law and also the end of the death of Franco in Spain, and since 1950s, 70s, and also 80s. And the interesting thing is that a lot of artists, Taiwanese artists who started in Spain in the past, they all started in Real Academia de San Fernando in Madrid. And as this picture, you can see something very interesting. Maybe you don't expect that you are very familiar with the expression of Davies, but you didn't know how influential it can be for those Taiwanese artists who has started in Spain in the past. And also later, it also influenced one of the artists called Ye Zhusheng, and he became quite influential for the art show started in Tainan called Modern Art Style of South Taiwan since 1986. It's also around the time of the end and also after the martial law when those artists they start to engage more with the artwork to address the issue of identity and also ideology and also politics, while this style of Davies allow those artists from the South, they can still use abstract art to address their own subjectivities while not use a style of confrontation or figurative expression. So I think something I would like to explore more in the future, because I think there is this belatedness in the art history in Spain and also in Taiwan, because as in 1986, with the opening of Museo Reina Sofia as a art center, Centro de Arte Reina Sofia, usually you think about almost 80 or 90, you are thinking about postmodernism, also almost the end of the beginning of the globalization, the end of Cold War, the fall of Berlin Wall. While Spain, when they opened the first museum of modern and contemporary art, they still promote those formalism like Davies and also Sara and Chihida. While in 86, this style also influenced Taiwan, and during this time, you also express something more contemporary, while those artists in the South, they still use the style of abstract art, but also it allowed them to create and also establish different subjectivities from them. So I think this belatedness and also this fomentation of new subjectivities through this connection between Taiwan and Spain is something with potential to be explored in the future. So this is my presentation. Thank you very much.
You open the audio there?
Yeah, it's open.
It's already open. Okay. Thank you very much, Connie. Thank you very much. I think it's very interesting, your focus. Now you presented to us the situation of collection in Art Museum in Taiwan. And in order to do the question, what we were thinking is to do the question after the presentation of Sara Carfagnini, which is going to be the next guest. So we're going to proceed with Sara, and after that, we're going to open the question and answer session. For those who are connected online, you can both reserve your turn by the chat, writing your question, or you can open your micro, and we're going to allow you to speak in order to do your question. That's going to be after Sara. That is going to be our next guest. Is going to come here. She's going to present in person from here. So I'm going to leave her actually my seat. Okay, let's see. This should be maybe this. Let's try to present. Okay. So open the chat. Can you see Sara presentation? If the phone see. Presenta. Proviamo a aprirlo un attimo. Ok. Guarda le due tagliata, no? Ok.
Sì.
Can you see the presentation, right?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, great. Very good. Like this, right? So Sara is an Italian researcher, actually. She studied in Università Foscari in Venice. She studied actually a master in Chinese studies, but she focused on independent art spaces in Taiwan, which is also the theme of her MA thesis. So today she's going to talk to us a little bit more about her research, about maybe her time in Taiwan as well. And currently she's based in Barcelona, working for an art gallery. So she came for the weekend to present in person her lecture to us. And I'm going to give you space to do your magic.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sara, and today I'd love to take you on a journey about independent art in Taiwan. It's a world full of creativity and experimentation and community, one that doesn't always make the headlines, but is extremely powerful both within the art world and across society as a whole. I first stumbled upon this world a couple of years ago when I had the chance to live in Taiwan. Everything is good?
Yeah.
Okay. And to experience its underground scene firsthand. And since then, it's become the heart of my research. So I'm very excited to be here today to speak about it. And in front of people who have been navigating from much longer than I have.
I think someone is nodding.
Okay, so let's start. In this presentation, I'll guide you through what independent art spaces are and why they are important both globally and locally in the Taiwanese context. What unique characteristics this space developed in the Taiwanese context, and I'll present some case studies that explore how art and society meet. Let's start. When talking about independent art spaces, it's very easy for confusion or misunderstanding to arise because the term independent can mean very different things in different contexts. So I thought it was a good idea to start the presentation with my personal elaboration of the concept of independent art spaces. Such spaces are artist-run, not-for-profit organization guided by a non-ideological, non-commercial ethos. They are basically conceived by artists for other artists. They are not about selling art or making profit. Instead, they're about freedom. First of all, freedom from market pressures, and also, most importantly, freedom from a political agenda, and thus freedom of expression. These spaces can also be conceived as a sort of an incubation space for young artists to experiment. So they also give the artist freedom to fail at the beginning of their artistic career. These spaces are extremely experimental, horizontal in organization, and can be found in everyday places such as apartments or neighborhood corners. I think that is important to mention also for further narrative is that they are extremely interactive. Visitors are not just passive viewers such as in traditional museums, but can be active participants in the work of art itself. These were more or less the basic characteristics of such spaces. Now I want to move on, trying to understand why it is so important to talk about independent art in Taiwan. Of course, as it can be inferred from the characteristics I just mentioned, these spaces are fundamental in the art ecology of any country in the whole world. But in Taiwan, their importance runs even deeper, and it is chained to the island's complex history, cultural and socio-political context. In Taiwan, independent art isn't just a trend, but it's a tool for transformation. I individuated 4 main factors of importance. Let's try to talk a little bit about them. First of all, the historical role. It has to be acknowledged that it was precisely these grassroots alternative initiatives that during the 90s pushed Taiwanese art into the global spotlight. In fact, in that period, traditional institutions such as museums and biennials were still constrained by cultural nationalism. So artists coming back from abroad had to find their own places to experiment with innovative ideas. The second factor is that Taiwan isn't just home to a thriving independent art scene, but it's one of its major players in Asia. Thanks to a unique mix of democratic values, youth-driven energy, a strong cultural foundation, and a perfectly functioning artistic infrastructure, Taiwan is now a hotspot for innovation. After the 80s, after the lifting of the martial law, creative freedom has exploded. And now Taiwan stands as a forerunner, as a visionary country that can serve as an example across all Asia and well beyond Asia. The third factor of importance is the connection between this kind of making art and everyday life. Independent art spaces are physically close to the community they are part of. They are not separated by the austere walls of the museum. And so they can reflect real social issues and encourage real public participation, and thus foster social change. Fourth factor, Taiwan's history is full of complexity. We have colonialism, we have marginalization, we have political tension. Independent art is able to give voice to identities that are still fragmented, still evolving, diverse, and sometimes often overlooked. They are free from curatorial strategies, they are free from international expectations and from commercial servitude. So they are more agile and closer to the realities people actually live. So in this sense, they can contribute to the ongoing process of identity formation in ways in which institutional art could never. This initial overview was to understand what independent spaces are and why it is important to talk about them in Taiwan. Let's now move on to see which characteristics these spaces take on Taiwanese soil. In Taiwan, independent spaces share most of the core values we have already examined. They are artist-run, not-for-profit, and community-oriented. But since this is a model that was originally born in the US, it has undergone an interesting transformation to fit Taiwanese unique cultural and social landscape. So let's now look at the characteristics these spaces developed to fit local needs and realities. The first characteristic I want to mention, we have already partially discussed, and it is the connection of independent art to community, identity, and environment. Independent art spaces grow from the bottom up, so they are inherently rooted in local culture and community. This makes them extremely powerful platform for dialogue, not just within artists, but also with the community. In Taiwan, this synergy works both ways. On one hand, artists can directly involve with social and environmental issues, while on the other hand, everyday life can be a rich source of inspiration for artistic creativity. Hereby, I reported a case study of Bamboo Curtain Studio. Sorry for the quality of the picture, I couldn't find any better. This is one of their long-term projects, which involved both local residents of the area, the Plum Tree Creek, students, and also the government to reflect on environmental issues of the area and to craft best practices for land care. This connection to the community and to the environment has become one of the signature traits of Bamboo Curtain Studio, which is one of the most, if not the most important space in Taiwan, and historically one of the first ones. The second characteristic is somehow connected to the first one, and it is off-site art. Off-site art means basically taking art outside of museums and galleries, into streets, into rivers, into rooftops, into fields, and into abandoned factories. Especially this last point is a phenomenon that is typical of Taiwan, the reuse of abandoned industrial buildings for creative purposes is a practice that has been termed the practice of lost space. Off-site art is extremely important for a couple of reasons. The identity issue is still a complex topic nowadays in Taiwan. So this kind of art being staged in public, familiar places not only can expand public access to art, but can also strengthen shared experiences and somehow foster a sense of cultural belonging. And this is a thing that institutional art often struggles with. A characteristic that I want to highlight is the focus on the body in Taiwanese independent art. Taiwan is a land of great performers. Here I cite just some of the names of internationally acclaimed performers, but we could go on, continue citing them. I think that this can also be a result of the extremely rich cultural background the Taiwanese performers can draw upon. Japanese experimental theater, Buto dance, Buddhist and Taoist practices of the body, indigenous rituals, Chinese opera are all part of this background. More traditional forms such as the Taiwanese opera or cloth puppetry still continue to influence the scene, and recent decades also saw the incorporation of more Western-like practices such as minimal actions, happenings, conceptual interventions. Historically, the body has been central to Taiwanese art history, and especially that of the independent art. Hereby I reported two pictures of two politically subversive performances from the 80s, from the years of the lifting of the martial law, more or less, that were held on the streets, respectively in Taipei and on the Orchid Island. We can also state that somehow independent art was born on the streets during the 80s with performance. Nowadays, experimental theater and performance are not as much politically subversive as they were at the time, but they maintain many of the characteristics. They are anti-institutional, they have a non-professional character of the members. It's not unusual to see performers that are not officially trained in theater or drama. They have an extremely collective approach to creation, and also it's important to mention the choice of unconventional venues to perform. Here, together with the two pictures of the two historical performances, I booked a picture of a collective I had the pleasure to meet in Taichung in 2022, the Dawn Dance Theater Association. They have as a signature trait this, in my opinion, beautiful practice to blend performing arts and performance art. And they often organize workshops open to the public when the spectators become an active part of the performance. And I think this is a very beautiful practice because it creates this sort of hybrid situations in which the piece of art is no longer something that has to be watched from far away. This leads us directly to the next point, which is transdisciplinarity. Taiwanese artists refuse to be put into a box. Their works freely blends installation, visual arts, performance, theater, dance, sound, and video art, creating this sort of hybrid multisensory experiences that are intentionally hard to define. I like to think of this also as a result of the hybridity of the country itself. Taiwan, during the course of history, has developed an extremely multifaceted cultural identity, an extremely multicultural environment, which continues to give artists a lot of different influences, themes to explore, and tools for expression to explore those things. This transdisciplinarity, of course, is something that can be achieved, especially if not solely in independent art spaces, because despite recent advancements, the academia still tend to categorize artworks into specific genres to put order and structure on artistic practice. The last characteristic, and I would like to say also the most important, is the focus on the process over the product. So the relational approach to art. Independent art in Taiwan is more about how art is made than what is made. Artists not only work together, but often live together and share their daily life. Unlike institutional settings, independent art is inherently collaborative. It's naturally collective, and this can be seen in its many forms it takes. Artistic collectives, artistic residencies, and also this is a typical phenomenon of Taiwan, the existence of these hybrid spaces, which is a mix of a bookshop, a cafeteria, an art gallery, an art residency, and these are all concepts that involve the notion of interaction between the participants. Here I put 3 case studies from spaces from people that I had the pleasure to meet while I was in Taiwan. On the left, we have Iceland's Art Park, a residency based in Taichung, which is an artistic residency, a multifunctional space. And interestingly, their motto is, alone we are free, but together we are strong. The picture is in the middle is a photo I took of a performance staged in Carp Gallery, a gallery based in Taichung. This gallery is not officially a residency, but from my experience, every artist that exhibited there also lived upstairs in the house of the gallerist, which is this young artist, an adorable man, Li Pan, it's called. The artist of the performance, together with the gallerist, recently, more or less 1 year ago, founded this new artistic residency in the hills of Nantou, near Taichung, which is the picture on the right. In the statement for the launch of the first open call to international artists, they explicitly stated that nowadays the majority of exhibitions are focused on the result, on the finished product, and they wanted to create a space focused on making art and living life. In this residency, people, the artists for a couple of months live together, they cook together, they cultivate vegetables together, and they even learn how to properly clean the space together. So this, I hope this can be also further discussed with the next discussion on artistic residency, because it's very interesting as a process. So it's time to draw some conclusions from the information I just gave. We can say that today independent art spaces in Taiwan are not just manifestations of the existence of an alternative subculture, but they are engines of experimentation, they are platforms for free expression and laboratories of community and care. They offer a sustainable alternative to make art that is against the productivity demands of the global art world, and being free both from political agendas and commercial servitude. They offer artists a neutral ground to do art. Most importantly, from the very first moments, these spaces reveal the nature of people, the way they communicate their vision on how to do art and how to live life. Their spontaneity and independent makes them incredibly honest and free. And for this reason, I think that independent art nowadays stands as one of the most direct lenses through which one can understand Taiwan itself. These were just some of my findings. Thank you for your attention. I'm just at the beginning of this research journey, so if everyone has some suggestion, a question, they will be welcomed. Thank you for your attention.
Let's see. Okay. Thank you very much, Sara. That was very, very interesting, well, especially for me, because we share a lot of similar perspective on especially socially engaged art in Taiwan, which is also my main focus. Okay, that's great. After these two presentations, we were thinking about starting a little session of questions. If any one of you is interested to ask something to our guests so far, please leave your question in the chat box, or you can just lift your hand and we can give you the mic to ask directly to the guest. I think it was very interesting, both presentation, very different perspective about Taiwanese art. One is definitely more focused on museology, it's the case of Shang-yu, about how art narration are built in the institutional context, and then Sara focus on very different approaches, which is socially engaged art, participatory projects, work with community. They can both coexist at the same time, even if they look so different, but they're still very different sphere of action for both artist and audience. So maybe I can start with a couple of questions here, because I've been thinking a lot about what have you say, both of you. For example, for Shang-yu, I was very interested in asking you. We already talked so many times about this, that Spain and Taiwan, they share kind of a similar path, no? Through the history. They both suffer a very long period of martial law for Taiwan and fascist dictatorship for Spain. Actually, Chiang Kai-shek and Francisco Franco were quite close, no, with each other. After that, the art manifested all of this through informalism, both in Spain and in Taiwan. You shall know the 15 Moon Group in Taiwan and Anthony Tapies in Spain. But even after the dictatorship, we still see some similarities between these two countries, no? How people react against the dictatorship through art, through the body, with public performances, as also Sara says, no? Chen in Taiwan, or Li Mingsheng. In Spain as well, we had a lot of example of body activation through art. So I think that the path of art history between Spain and Taiwan is very similar. Also, the timing is quite similar, no? Even if Taiwan, the dictatorship ended a little bit later, the martial law was lifted a little bit later. But I'm very interested to understand when it happens, this change in the institution. After, with the democratization, the Taiwanization in Taiwan, it looks like museum tried to start a new narration about contemporary Taiwan. And from my experience, even if there is no public permanent collection displayed in the museum, there are a lot of museums that they do that archival work in Taiwan, no? They store artwork, they try to create a narrative about Taiwanese art history, but simply they don't make it public through permanent collection, but rather they choose temporary exhibition, for example. My question is the following: why this approach? What do you think is the main cause of this approach? Do you think maybe museum think it's not worthwhile to create a public permanent collection project? Do you think maybe it's not that attractive for the audience, for people visiting the museum? Maybe the idea of museum was different, no, in the 90s in Taiwan rather than in Spain, so it led to a different approach also in this. I don't know if you have any idea about all of this.
Okay, thank you very much for the response from you, Roberto. Actually, this is also the question that I ask myself all the time. But I think there might be several reasons, but one of the reasons I feel is when you don't have a display of permanent collection, you kind of avoid, you kind of avoid the situation to position yourself. Just as I say, for the art history in Taiwan, is very contexted. When you present those artists after Chiang Kai-shek, after the evacuation, somehow those artists become kind of dominant in the cultural scenery in Taiwan, while it also suppressed the other artists before then in the Japanese colonial time. So I feel somehow if you don't have a display of permanent collection, somehow you don't need to position yourself. You don't need to stand to either part. Either you are belonging to the Taiwanese artists before the Chiang Kai-shek or after Chiang Kai-shek, or if you are an indigenous artist, maybe you don't agree what all those Taiwanese artists or Chinese artists neither. But I think the most radical or interesting way is still to be brave and to position all different ideas in the same time. You don't need to stand for you don't need to stand, or you don't need to support which one is the most authentic or most correct, while all of these conflicts are all part of Taiwan, and it makes us more interesting.
That's very interesting. And this also led to another very short question that I have for you, that it's about how to position it and re-narrate now these art histories. Because, for example, now you say that now it's time also to rewrite a little bit Taiwanese art history from different perspectives, and the public permanent collection can help with this. And my question also is this a duty maybe for the biggest venues like Taipei Fine Arts Museum, or it's rather a movement that should start by, let's say, smaller institutions like Taitung Art Museum, and they might be like the first step to the change, no? Because I do really believe that smaller museums sometimes can be way more effective in operating a change in narratives rather than the big institution and all the political and cultural conflicts they might carry, no, inside.
Actually, I can respond to this question briefly. Actually, I think there are a lot of potentials in those medium and small, how to say, scale art institutions in Taiwan. However, I feel it's still more possible for those big institutions to dedicate more effort to investigation and also to kind of the rewrite of the art narration, because for something, how to say, for something quite for something in reality, actually we see there are so many art museums in Taiwan, not only in big cities but also in small cities. But for most of the small cities, for the museum, they don't actually have, for the art museum, none of them really have director. They are under the management of the director of the department of visual culture of the cultural office of each county. And for those directors, they usually don't have any background in art history. And so somehow for those small art institutions, they always have this difficulty to have more professional really to dedicate to the running of their museum, even though they try to do a lot of efforts, even with a lot of limitation. However, regarding to the energy of the research and also really ambition to rewrite different narration actually can be challenging for them. But they can also try to, but there is also the duty for those small and medium scale art institutions to dedicate to research of the local art history, because for their art history are always seen not important compared to the one in the big city. So if they do not try to put effort to write their own art history, their art history will not be written by anyone else neither. So I think this is my question to those questions.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe we can start with a question by Roberto in the chat box that I'm gonna ask you, Shang-Yu, if has the Taipei Fine Arts Museum tried to bring the experiments shown in the example you presented to international venues, which is very interesting, no, internationalization of projects outside of Taiwan. Would also be very interesting to know more. And then maybe we can also ask, after this, we can ask something to Sara as well. Please.
I would say they are rather less internationalization of the exhibitions in Taiwan to the world. But some museums in Taiwan, like National Taiwan Fine Art Museum, they also try to bring some show like Huang Tu Shui to Japan. So I think actually there are still a lot of efforts that Taiwan need to make to bring those exhibition of the world art of Taiwanese art history and try to connect with the international, because I always feel the mainstream way of internationalization in Taiwan is to do biennials in Taiwan. We have Taipei Biennial, we have Taiwan Biennial. It's always a way to gather those international artists and exchanges in Taiwan, but it's always more focused on the field of contemporary art. But I feel if Taiwan want to be written in the world art histories, we also need to engage more collaborative research of art history of modern and contemporary art to the neighbor countries and also to the world.
Okay, perfect. We have to change a little bit between devices. Thank you very much. Well, I would like to ask something also to Sara that is here, then we can get a little bit more question if there is any for Shang-yu as well. But I was very interested also in Sara's presentation.
Interpretation.
Sorry, Enia?
No, nothing.
Okay. What I was very interested to ask Sara as well was, for example, if because she talked about independent art spaces in Taiwan, no? How their mission was different, maybe in the 80s, 90s. They were more independent, more underground, no? The same Chen they you show in the 80s with light clay, I think it's in English, no? They started some spaces, no? Very independent, or apartment 2, for example. One of them is also Art Salon. Actually, we have the book Very Period here that actually a little bit tells how it changes, no? The space during these past 20 years and the big challenges the independent art spaces, not only in Taiwan, but I would say all around the world, have to face when they come across a more mainstream culture now as well, and when they have also to survive economically, especially. So my question is, from what you've studied maybe in books, no, about these spaces in the 90s, and what you've experienced during your stay in Taiwan, which was 3 years ago, have you found any difference between these art spaces? Do you think they evolve in a different way? They're more mainstream maybe, or they still be able to find a compromise, a negotiation between independent and more mainstream?
Yeah, they're very different. I mean, at the beginning, as I was briefly mentioning, they were born as an alternative. They were anti-institutional in a subversive manner. They were an alternative platforms. All these artists during the 90s or the last years of the 80s were coming from abroad, from Spain, from the US, and couldn't exhibit in the traditional museum that was still focused on how provide politically correct version of Taiwanese-ness. So they were born as something opposite to the museum. During the years, I think Taiwan has been able to create kind of a virtuous cycle of a collaboration between the two. Right now, we see independent art spaces that are backed up by government institutions. So we have the Contemporary Culture Lab in Taipei, which operates within the ethos of an independent space. It's experimental, it's cross-disciplinary, which was actually founded by the Ministry of Culture. So right now there is this sort of cooperation. During the years, there were a lot of independent art spaces representing Taiwan at the Taiwan Pavilion in the Venice Biennial, which is curated by the Taipei Museum. So it's very changing in the sense that right now they are able not only to coexist pacifically, more or less, depending on the cases, but also to collaborate. So this is a thing that has changed during the course of time.
Very, very interesting. We can even read the question by Roberto as well for you, and I'm going to read it loud for those that might not be able to read in the chat. In your research, are you studying the financing system of those independent spaces? I suppose there is a significant difference between the 90s and now. Well, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, by the way. The question is somehow connected also to the first one, in the sense that here in the West is less usual that this happens, but in Asia in general, it's not unusual to see independent spaces actually funded by government or government-related institutions or organizations. These, of course, can be risky because, of course, if you get money from an organization, you need to operate within the ethos without going against the the ideology of that organization. Independent art spaces are trying, some of them are trying to find alternative ways of funding. In the case of the hybrid places, galleries, bookshops, cafeterias that function also as residency can be seen as an attempt to self-fund. Historically, the spaces, as you can see from the name, for example, apartment number 2 actually functioned a bit like as an apartment. People paid rent to host exhibitions and curated the whole process. Yeah, right now it's a bit different. The spaces try also to create some sort of a safety net among them. There are huge nets of spaces that incorporate independent art spaces across all Asia, so they kind of help each other to survive. So there's many different cases of funding, but yeah, for sure it is a complex issue.
Yeah. Do you have any question as well here?
I have one.
Let's see if you can hear. They're gonna have a question.
So I have a question for you, Shang-yu. I hope I say your name correct. So first of all, thank you for your presentation, because I'm not expert at all in the Taiwanese contemporary art, and you gave an overview also like historical, so it's really much appreciated. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was wondering whether you were thinking of a potential exchange that the Taiwanese museology and the Spanish museology could have. So like certain aspects that Taiwanese could bring to Spain, and other aspects that the Spanish museology could bring to Taiwan.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question. Actually, I follow way of how to bring Taiwanese museology to Spain is what I'm thinking. While actually, thanks to my research about the reorganization of the collection of Museo Reina Sofia from 2008. Actually, I enrich a lot about the Spanish museology, especially once I heard the statement of Manuel Segade, because he mentioned that for him Spain is like a place for exportation of radical museologists to the world, because he feel for those Spanish directors, they went through they were all influenced by this dictatorship by Franco. So after the end of the death of Franco, they all try to rethink more radically or more critically about the way of the narration of the Spanish art history. So not only in Museo Reina Sofia, I also feel like in Gado's M, and also like Roberto has shown me in his article about Ivan in Valencia, or even Magba. I feel Spain is very interesting. Most of the museums, they are very interested in retelling different stories of Spanish art histories, and also start to talk more about this activism, and also with performances, and also new perspective on female art, and also queer, and also Latin American. So in the future, I really hope that by Roberto or by different Spanish professionals, we can establish more dialogue between different ways of museology between Spain and Taiwan. Especially, I think Spain is, the more I study, I think Spain is so how to say, I would say so radical, so political. Most of the museums, they do not think themselves as a place for creative industry, but they'll always talk about museum as a space for emancipation, both for where we are now, and also another way to think about the past. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. It's fascinating also how like you know all of the museums in Spain so well.
He's an expert.
You really are. Thank you very much.
I don't know if there is any other question, maybe in the chat box, or any of the people connected online that would like to ask anything to our guest. We can proceed also with another question from the public here.
I have a question. I'd like to ask to Sara. So considering Taiwan's specific geopolitical context and post-colonial identity struggles, how do independent art spaces contribute to redefinition of cultural sovereignty and soft power in the region?
Okay. Yeah, in order to answer to this question, I have to do a brief introduction. Like one thing is independent art space, what happens inside the independent art space, and the thing that I was mentioning in the presentation, because they are able to mirror the realities the people actually live in Taiwan, and so they are important hubs for self-determination and cultural identity formation. The other thing is when you talk about soft power, we need to also mention that sometimes institutional platforms also represent Taiwan through independent art space. So, for example, in international exhibitions, the Taipei Biennial at the Taipei Fine Arts Museum or the Taiwan Pavilion in Venice are, we can say, two of the major platforms. When this global exhibition happened, there is the concept of representation at play. So the artwork goes under significant rereading of the initial concept of the artist. So independent art space are born spontaneously. They are not born with the pressure to exercite some kind of soft power, but they inherently are able to mirror society and also to change society to some extent. The government in the last years has somehow understood the importance they hold, and so it's trying through different methods and systems to kind of exploit these characteristics that they have, and so they can also be used as an important platform for soft power, but they don't have it, in my opinion, in their nature, in their scope.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's actually a topic that I've been studying a lot in my own research, in my own thesis as well, because the fragile relationship between, as they say, soft power, and maybe the instrumentalization sometimes of social art practices or local art projects, it's difficult to trace the line between being spontaneous, being a little bit instrumentalized for different purposes. But sometimes even when they're instrumentalized, they can use the tools and that resources offered by the hegemony to create their own narrative as well. So it's a very long topic, I think, that it needs a lot of understanding and a lot of research. But I think it's very interesting, very, very interesting. For example, recently I've been studying a little bit more about Jinmen Islands. They're very those islands, the archipelago of islands, which is very close to mainland China, and even there through social art, for example, actually the book there, they've been able to through local and government helping to create a feeling of Jimenez locality and not necessarily Taiwanese or Chinese cultural influences. So it's very interesting to see how sometimes these independent initiatives are able to get the resources from the hegemony, but create something different that is not like subject to the soft power. So yeah, I don't know if there is any question more maybe from people connected online. This is your last chance if you're interested to ask something to our guests. Otherwise, we're gonna proceed with a little break of 15 minutes. In the meantime, we can screen the video that Shang-Yu shared with us. For those who are interested to watch it, we're going to be screening here and online as well. And then around 12:05, we're going to start again with the next lectures by Che-Wei, Man-Chun, and then we're going to open the session for questions. Well, Shang-Yu, I don't know if you have a question, please.
Yeah. The question is the one I sent it to you because I'm quite interested in the rewriting of the art history. So I'm wondering about for you and also for the Spanish public, what do you think about the evolution of the narration of Spanish art history recent years? Are there some more radical approaches you observed, and also what are some urgencies of the topic you think you still need to address? Because I'm very interested in this, how to say, comparative dialogue between different ways of new narration.
Well, I think in Spain we have done a lot in the past 15 years, 10 years. I think the organization of the collection of Reina Sofia was a huge step, no, to renovate the classic art history in Spain. Before that, you know, the narration of Spanish art history was quite linear, no, quite chronological, and it kind of missed something when you come to the modernity, to nowadays. With the Reina Sofia, they organized the collection through big topics and also underlooked topics through the history, like feminism mostly, and especially decolonialism and post-colonialism. What I think is very appreciating by recent Spanish museology is also a broader look to their colonial period. For so long, we mostly address only to Latin American issue, no? The colonization of Spanish people in Latin America, which is very, very important for sure, and also very contemporary as well, because of the huge population of Latino people living in Spain, and also addressing to their identity while living in Spain, the Latino diaspora not here. But recently, Spain also engaged to a broader concept of decolonialism that, for example, includes way more Philippines. No? Philippines has been an archipelago of island that has been subjected to Spanish colonization for a very long period. And there are a lot of Filipino community living in Spain, especially Madrid here. And lately, they've been addressing a lot, no, to this period of colonization. And that's very interesting to see how the same concept of colonialism and post-colonialism or decolonialism now is getting a broader importance and also a broader look inside of Spanish museology, encompassing all the societies, the cultures, and the territories that have been subjected to this colonization process, no? Then I don't know if someone from the public want to say something else.
Well, I could tell about the Reina Sofia in terms of the display. Also, there is an effort into changing the way things are narrated, as you were saying before. Like, it seems like you I don't know if you visited Madrid. Yes.
Shang-Yu?
Yes.
Yeah, he was studying the master in Reina Sofia as well.
Okay, so you know the Reina Sofia very well.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. So yes, you know, like it's a kind of maybe more difficult visit for a general public, but it also wants to break with the way that the art history is narrated, and also breaking with the idea of the male genius artist and trying to just like, or also like the way that, for instance, the Cubism room is presented, not just like talking about Picasso and Braque and France, but also representing other places where the Cubism has existed and has been contemporary. So like breaking with the very linear Western way of narrating things.
Yeah, I think that,
and also I think an effort that has been made also in the last years is also to open up, like the museums are opening up to other disciplines of art, which has have not been historically included in art history. So maybe like graphic design, books, magazines, also a lot of architecture, for example, in Reina Sofia. But I'm also thinking, for example, in IVAM, in Valencia now, there's an exhibition about fanzines, which is, I think, very historical, that in a museum of contemporary art, they are opening up to kind of a broader sense of art history, more connected to visual culture. So yeah, I think it's also something very positive, no? And also a critical way of thinking about art history, not only in the history part, but also like the visual culture in general. Yeah.
It's true. So especially Reina Sofia is putting a lot of effort in that now as well. So yeah. And I think it's something happening in Taiwan as well. 1 month ago, we had the pleasure to host in Carfagnini Museum the Taipei Art Book Fair. And we also had the occasion to hear a lecture about the archive they're building about Taipei graphic design and heritage, no? So my wish for the future is also to bring them maybe in Spain for a proper exhibition. And it will be very fantastic, no, to collaborate maybe even with Reina Sofia in the future. Also because this encompassing the role of Spain around their colonization period, it can even influence Taiwan itself. No, we know that Taiwan suffered Spanish occupation even for a short period, very long ago. They did suffer in the northern part of the territory, no, the Spanish occupation, while that occupation was there. So even if the, let's say the heritage of this occupation, the effect of this occupation is no longer that present in Taiwanese territory, there's still some relics, no, about that. So it will be also interesting for Spain to engage with this, no? That they did not colonize only the Philippines, but they also occupy a lot of territories as islands in the southeast area. And even if they were not there for a long period, they still been there and they still occupy those places. So for me, that's also a threat for the future of collaboration between Taiwan and Spain. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know if you want to add something else, Shang-yu. If you have any more,
maybe a brief discussion, because I also wonder, because for this presentation I try to explore a little bit about this influence of WS to those artists, Taiwanese artists who started in Spain since, especially from 70s to 80s. So for your first impression, what did you think about their expression, and do you see any potential for the collaborative research on this field between Taiwan and Spain?
Yeah, I'm very interested about these similarities in Spanish and Taiwanese art history in the late 20th century, no? Even if this might happen a little bit earlier in Spain, no? Because of the political situation, it's interesting to see how they develop at the same time, more or less, and how they can inspire each other. I'm not very expert about Fifth Moon Group or East Group in Taiwan, so I'm not sure about their influences, but I did read the book, the actor you gave me, about this Taiwanese displaying in Sao Paulo Biennial, and I think in those years as well, no, Spain was displaying in the Biennial, so that could be like a possible confrontation between these two countries, no. But I'm sure there's going to be some kind of influence, especially because we know the Spanish informalism was a movement that has been trying to be exported a lot internationally. So I'm sure that it even arrived in Asia quite easily, and it could suppose like an inspiration. But I'm not sure about the opposite, no? In what degree Spanish artists has been influenced by Taiwanese or even more broader East Asian artists during that era. Not too expert, but we can find some people that are more expert about the topic that I'm sure they can address to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, as we started a little bit later, maybe now we're gonna, well, later for Spanish time actually, we're gonna proceed with a little break, screening the video from Shang-yu, and we can see each other again in 15 minutes, so 12:15 Spanish time, which should be in Taiwan, let's see, 1 second, that I don't want to mess it again, 6:15 in Taiwan, correct. And we can proceed then with the presentation of Che-Wei and Man-Chun, and then again with some question and close the event, okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for those who are joining right now, and see you in 15 minutes again. I'm gonna proceed to share the video with you. Let's see. Let's close this.
代美术发展的历史较为短浅，艺文资源相对有限。然而，在2007年成立的第一座县立美术馆——台东美术馆，它却有500多件的典藏品。我们这一次就是希望以典藏品为方法，来发展出一个结合全球视野跟在地关怀的艺术史踏查。台东的地理狭长，区域发展较为分散，多批的移民潮分别形成了多元面貌的美术景观。
台东地区早期因为地势阻隔及人口基数的原因，开发较晚，但也在这样屏蔽的条件以及历史契机之下，造就了台东美术独特的一面。其中也包含因国共内战而来到台东的水墨艺术家，以及经由他们推展而开的水墨艺术，当中也包含了大量的女性艺术家，他们更与在地的女性艺术社群形成一幅强韧的女性艺术群像。
我是比较偏重写生的哈，我为什么会画出这样的一个山水的一个风格出来？其实是跟我在那个李德老师画画创作、画模特、画素描有很大的关系啊。因为李德老师给我很多的一些西方的一种造型绘画创作的一些观念啊。他尤其是特别注意到一个画面一个整体的一种关系啊。那像李奇茂老师，他就也有非常多的一种笔墨的一种应用，尤其他非常讲究说，我们画画一定要有画趣啊，你怎么去表现？你看到这个大怎么去表现一个画味、画趣啊，而不是一种自然的一种复制而已啊。
你画到最后的话，只画到你自己心里面所想的。像我画这些黑的东西，最早的话我是画南横的一些山里面跟那公路， 回来就整理一下，我就也没有怎么打草稿，没有稿，就一面点一面画，一面点一面画，画到什么样的程度，什么该停，什么时候该画，就这样子，很自然的。你太注重那个规矩的话，画到后来就画死了，反而就随心画。反正你已经练了功夫基本功，基本功很重要，基本功练了几十年了，该要有自己的东西了。
其实女妖是每个人内在的，不管你是男性或女性，它没有性别的区分。我觉得那个女字我比较用的，它是一个阴性特质，就是所谓的一个所谓人有阴阳嘛，有阳性面、阴性面。那这个女字它比较代表的就是一个阴性特质，它就是一个隐秘的特质。基本上我会觉得女妖这个东西，妖所谓的妖，它其实就是一种自然本质里面的一个本质性的概念，就是所谓的变异。就像你演化，你没有妖，你没有办法演化，因为你没有突变，你没有办法有产生新的物种或产生新的什么。所有的新的概念都来自于变化，来自于变异。那这个就是一个本质性的现象。那这个就是妖，这个就是女妖，这就是我最 care 最被她迷，就是我觉得她最美的地方啦。其实这个就是她就是会触动我吧。
在台东给我的感受就是我刚刚讲，除了那种光亮这样子正能量之外，就是我们要回到我们自己本身的一种野性的部分，就是我们的不只是所谓的初心，所谓的初心只是一个思维的事情，可是回到我们的本来的一种兽性或者我们的原始性呢，是回到我们本身的一种身体的本能，那个些事情可能我们都忘记了。自从我到台东2000年以后，开始走台东以后，我开始真正的认识到，我们台湾是一个岛，是一个面临一个所有的海洋的一个岛。所以，因为海洋的光线，就是太平洋的光线，让我重新认识到光线，让我重新认识到，就是说我们的生存的处境跟位置。所以呢，就2000年以后，我的创作基本上就是，在属于这种岛屿跟海洋的这样子的一种关系跟这样子的一种表达。
台东县有着全台湾最高的原住民人口比例，当中更有着丰富的原住民工艺传统。艺术发展则包含1980年代兴起的原住民木雕，到当代的原住民创作表现，以及2011年台东美术馆新办南岛美术奖带出的视野。
那时候台湾解严已经很久了，他只是说我们那时候，我自己那时候都没有很关心这个台籍老兵这些老人家。那突然间，突然部落突然间就是大概有将近10个的台籍老人家回来。我自己的叔公也是那个台籍老兵，那突然间，回来了，我也莫名其妙怎么会去有一个讲很标准的普通话，明明就是阿美族的脸孔，然后讲一个非常标准的普通话，就觉得哇，这是什么样的一个反差非常大。当老人家在口述他的那个过程、他的历史的时候，你就会有一些画面在你的脑子里面，然后你要怎么去呈现，你要怎么去做，可能就慢慢思考，就会有一个比较具象的东西。
当时的运动其实是蛮受关注的，那大家的焦点会比较放在就是对抗的两方，一个是资方跟政府，那一个就是环保团体这样子，然后很少人会去关注就是真正跟美丽湾最密切的小小的赤铜部落。 那个现实的碰撞跟接触，就是我理解他们是怎么样的人啊，以及从他们身上去扩散到就是整个台湾岛原住民，可能这些流动的都市原住民其实有相同的命运的这件事，其实没有那么的要 focus 在美丽湾的这件事上，然后也不光光说只有美丽湾这个开发案，可能在当时或现在都一直有一些开发案一直在虎视眈眈。
在港口的那个背篓的时候，是蜗牛，应该说这个漩涡的造型。我那时候一直有漩涡的那个一直跑到我脑袋里面去，然后连去他们叫独固嘛，他们的那个海螺啊叫独固这样，然后就光看那个像怎么都是螺，什么意思这样子，然后我就想说啊，它其实漩涡就是一个生命的起源的一个造型。那我不知道我背那个背篓的时候就已经怀孕了，然后就是都是很多很呛死的东西在里面，然后又背着那个背篓，然后自己身体里面又发生很不一样的变化的时候就，哇，那其实我自己有一种很奇怪的感慨，就是说好像背着这个篓，如果我就是在台湾土地流浪的原住民。
我一直就想要把这种东西呈现出来啊，这个也是原住民很重要的知识智慧。那这种智慧，我不想要把它变科学化，就是因为你会觉得慢慢的会把它变成说，好像是一种物种学，或者是你知道很博物的感觉，就你知道这个叫什么名字什么的。可是我不想要做到这件事，我希望的是说，哦，原来我们的周遭旁边现在有什么野菜，我们就拿那个菜，然后拿到我们面前，然后我们洗涤，然后煮一道料理出来，大家一起分享，把它吃掉。这个叙事线完全不一样。对，这个是我要讲的，就是我要走的叙事线是这个，就是属于身体的这个路径。
台东美术的另一个独特之处，在于传统美术馆空间以外的艺术实践，特别是2002年，一群以原住民艺术家为主的艺术工作者，在金樽海滩进行了3个月的生活与创作，以及环境抗争的艺术行动等。此外，还有在台东各地举办的大地艺术节等等，都反映出人、环境与艺术之间的紧密连结与活力。
我其实常常想过了20年其实也很快，虽然很长，可是我发觉，大概很多人都没想到，20年之后的意识部落还那么多人关注，而且其实在过程里面也很多去谈意识部落。我想当初我们这一群人应该都没想到这些。虽然在创作部分啊、生活部分，其实是你很自己的。那在很多的所谓的有一个方向性的地方，我们好像是同一条船，啊，每一个人手上都有一只桨。我说前面的岛比较好，有的人可能说另外一边的比较好，可是到最后会滑向哪里是每一个人的桨，所以他到最后是因为这些凝聚的力量。所以它共识是很重要的，在意识部落。
就是写了一条2条就是列啦，什么温馨小叮咛，反正就是巴拉巴拉，然后我们就开始接招，我们这样子我们才开始被迫，我们才开始接招的，才开始变成行动。对，本来我们是很天真浪漫，对，是因为这样子，我们就开始讨论，人家已经给我们一个，那我们要怎么回应他们？才开始有了我们第一次的这个豆小花什么肉身为礼呀，就是我们一个集体创作的作品。
几乎每一个创作者，你问他说为什么你选择在这边生活，为什么你会在这里生活，那你不去别的地方，你最后选择了这里。这里面很多人其实在来到这里之前是计划本来要去哪里的，或是本来计划是不停的一站一站的流浪的，可是到这一站的时候全部停下来，包含我自己就全部停在这里。那为什么呢？因为每一个人都说，因为在这里我可以自己，我也可以一起。那我们在美术馆里面去呈现这些作品的时候，我就会透过这些看起来既不相关，但其实又很有某些连结的这种叙事性的串联，去把这样的东西表现出来。这样，
大家来那边其实试着去成为一个也不能说是试着成为一个地方的人，因为我们永远不会成为地方的人，而是说试着在那一个很短暂的那一个片段，把你自己的生命经验抽离，然后可以灌入到地方居民的生活经验。所以我们大部分的时间的工作，比如说我们要跟着去采收小米啊，然后有时候去跟猎人上山啊，然后有时候要去参加部落的活动啊，对，所以这些东西其实相对于我们而言，或许它跟传统的策展的概念不是主要的工作的内容，但我自己回想起来，那是我最重要的策展的内容。但我不会称之它为策展，原因是因为它并不是在我们的定义的策展可能不在那个内容里面，但对我而言，那个其实是南方以南会做出来一个最重要的原因。没有这些经验，其实基本上不可能南方以南。
¿Cómo combatir el calor si tienes problemas para mantenerte fresco en habitaciones calurosas?
Okay. Hello everyone again. Hope you enjoyed the video. Can you hear me? Everything? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Che-Wei. So now we're going to proceed with the second part of the event, of the session, and with Che-Wei and Man-Chun. So we're going to talk about their experiences in the researches. Che-Wei with this latest curatorial project in the Green Island Biennial, which is very interesting. I'm very looking forward to hear more about that. And then Man-Chun, she's gonna tell us a little bit more about her latest research about art residencies in Taiwan, which is also very expert about the theme. So I think it's gonna help us a lot to understanding more about this approach, in contemporary Taiwan, in Taiwanese contemporary art. So Che-Wei is a cultural worker based in Taipei, Taiwan. We had the pleasure to meet each other in my latest visit in Taiwan. He is also pursuing a master in contemporary art criticism and curatorial practices in the National Taipei University of Education. It's an English taught master directed by Professor Lu Pei, which is actually my main references of social engaged art. It's a very, very good master that I hope I can also collaborate with in the future. Che-Wei is very active in the curatorial panorama. I'm very impressed with this latest collaboration, especially the one in the Green Island, in occasion of the biennial. And before starting, we're gonna share from here a video about the biennial. I think it's gonna be faster. We're gonna share it. Okay, let me try. Okay. Can you hear the video and see the video? Very good. Okay, very beautiful. I think it's going to help us a lot to have a visual help to navigate through your presentation. Che-Wei. So if you like, you can proceed to share your presentation, and we're going to leave you the space for your lecture.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto, for showing us the video. Okay, so good afternoon, greetings from Taiwan. I'd like to thank to Roberto first about the invitation. It's an honor to join this online seminar. And so the topic today is about the Green Island Biennial, which is open last month and is still ongoing till the 21st of September. So if anyone happened to be in Taiwan, welcome. And the Green Island Biennial was originally named the Green Island Human Rights Art Festival. It wasn't until this edition that the name was officially changed to biennial to better reach international audiences. The biennial is organized by the National Human Rights Museum, which has two branches, one in Taipei and the other on Green Island. Both were converted from former prisons for political dissidents, commonly referred to in Taiwan as historical sites of injustice. So the Green Island is a volcanic island off the southeastern coast of Taiwan. Once known as the Island of Fire, it takes about 15 minutes by ferry or only 15 minutes by plane to travel from Taiwan to the island. And the island is roughly 15 square kilometers in size, and a full loop by scooter takes only about an hour. From 1951 to 1987, it served as a detention site for political prisoners during the White Terror. Today, however, it is a popular domestic tourist destination. You might note that Taiwan itself has suffered from multiple colonial regimes. Even today, our national identity remains highly conflicted. In 1949, after the KMT retreated to Taiwan following its defeat in the Chinese Civil War, martial law was imposed, lasting 38 years and 56 days until its lift in 1987. Green Island's isolated geography, surrounded by sea and a super strong current, made it suitable for incarceration. And prisons were established there as early as the Japanese colonial period in the early 20th century. So let me share two cases of well-known victims to let everyone have a better picture about White Terror. So Chen was a Malaysian overseas student who came to Taiwan for university in 1967. In 1971, after the Tainan U.S. Information Center bombing, a case he had no actual connection to, he was summoned by the Investigation Bureau and forced to confess. He was detained for 3 weeks, tortured, and in the end, he needed to fabricate a story claiming that he was a member of the Malaysian Communist Party and was ultimately charged and sentenced to death. Thanks to his family's effort and the Malaysian government's intervention, the death sentence was commuted to 12 years. This guy is Chen Menghe, born in Taipei in 1930, was accused while studying art of participating in a subversive organization called the Academic Research Society. So it's perhaps it's similar to what we're doing today. And was sentenced to 15 years under the martial law for joining a rebel organization. While imprisoned on Green Island, his artistic and photographic skills allowed him to work in the prison's photography unit, documenting official visits, briefings, and mugshots for new lifers. At age 66, Chen Menghe later drew detailed bird's eye view and floor plans of the Green Island New Life Correction Center from memory, which became the basis for the museum's architectural models and reconstruction. So every year on May 17th, victims and their families return to Green Island for memorial activities, which is why we deliberately choose this date for the biennial's opening. It marks the arrival of the first political prisoners in 1951, traveling from Keelung to Green Island, and the distance is exactly 149 sea miles, which is the title of this edition's exhibition. So the term White Terror refers to this specific time when anyone could be arrested and sentenced for virtually anything, making the trauma itself of this historical period extremely complex, as these prisoners themselves do not share a unified ideology. So the prisons from these two periods weren't actually called prisons, but were named as the New Life Correction Center, and in the second phase called Oasis Villa. And the inmates were referred to not as prisoners, but as new lifers. So the KMT used these euphemisms to beautify and legitimize its authoritarian rule. while also appealing to the democratic ideals of the US allies. So the Human Rights Museum places great importance of the reactions of these victims. As you can see in the picture, this is me doing a tourist guide to the victims during the opening, because most of the victims were very young, maybe like in their 20s, or even some maybe just 17, 18 years old. So actually, a lot of them are still alive and capable of walking. So, so frankly speaking, the Human Rights Museum actually are extremely afraid of any possible negative comments from these victims and their families. Because in 2009, another exhibition at the Human Rights Museum in Taipei actually witnessed a victim's family member directly dismantling the artwork on site, with the family member being arrested in handcuffs while the artist knelt and cried at the scene, ultimately ending with the artists apologizing and jointly removing the work with family. Under such sensitive circumstances, art often needs to navigate more about this kind of complex considerations. The museum's eagerness to avoid conflict sometimes inevitably becomes a form of alternative censorship, as it essentially involves the institution trying to guess possible reactions from the victims beforehand. So before even the victims respond to. So let me share several artworks from this edition that during their development process once made us particularly cautious and worried about potential offense, and often we needed had a meeting to discuss with the museum. So as you saw in the video, this is an video installation artwork from Taiwanese artist Yang Jiehuai. Even its title alone could be extremely controversial. So what the artist did here is he examined the narrative transformation from Green Island's history as a site of injustice to its current thriving tourism industry. So he publicly recruited 4 young people on Threads to participate in a work exchange program on the island, transforming the prison cell into a typical B&B interior design style, filming the whole process in a reality show format. So if people sense a hint of irony embedded in this work, we argue that such irony is already an intrinsic feature of the history itself. For instance, the prison's name, Oasis Villa, the artist's inspiration actually came from this old black and white photograph showing early hydraulic engineering construction, actually constructed by the inmates themselves, which also served as their bathing area, known as Liu Ma Gou. So besides the waterway, you can see they built a South Pacific vacation-style pavilion where actually many prisoners, they'll pose here for photographs to send home with their letters, as if being imprisoned on Green Island was a working holiday, to convey to their families that they're living well on the island, and so that their family do not need to be worried of. So this is another work from Taiwanese artist Qin Zhengde. It's a site-specific installation composed of coral stones arranged into the traditional Chinese character for love. So it's basically ai, meaning love, on a hillside near the mountain wall of the New Life Correction Center. So the institution was once concerned that victims might interpret this as urging them to forgive the history, or forgive the state through love, while the artist's concept was actually inspired by a photograph taken by Chen Menghe, showing some slogans once erected on the cliffside, you know, like Hollywood style. So it wrote on the cliffside like benevolence, love, integrity, righteousness, and so on, known as the 8 virtues. So these characters were originally molded by the inmates themselves. And the artists choose love specifically by reenacting the same process of gathering the stones and recreating them. The artists re-examines love from what was once used as the moral dogma of the correction center itself. So when we, as the curatorial team, first visited Chen Wuzhen, so the far left male figure, who at age 20 was sentenced to 2 years in prison for casually scribbling anti-central government, anti-KMT on a psychological test, and later become an elementary school art teacher. And we invited him to participate in this biennial. He asked us, "Are you here today to meet a victim or an artist?" And I think that this question fundamentally revealed my confusion. So within this biennial framework, artists are encouraged to reiterate trauma and celebrate resilience, but are assigned to a sealed past. Particularly, our assumptions about the victim's reactions inevitably limited them into a specific mode of image making and a specific mode of narration making. So these are Chen Wuzhen's artwork, oil on canvas. I must say that they're really quite excellent, actually far beyond my expectation. But if we only view him as a victim and strategically invite him to participate in the Biennale merely as an endorsement of curatorial legitimacy, that would be such a waste and would bury his identity as an artist for the past half a century. So in this exhibition, we also invited a descendant of a victim, Huang Shihong, son of the late Huang Ruilin, to participate. And actually, Shihong's response to this history confirmed my suspicions. Sometimes the assumptions made by curatorial teams or institutions when dealing with these victims who hold historical legitimacy don't align with reality. In his artwork, Shihong didn't reiterate his father's suffering, nor did he express anger or criticism towards the perpetrators. Instead, he focused on how the victims cared for him and nurtured him during his upbringing, teaching him how to be a kind person, focusing on love. You can see here, a twisted strand of barbed wire transforms into a blooming rose at the Tseng. In the artist's word, even in the shittiest place, the most beautiful flowers can still bloom. And on the exhibition wall, he deliberately hung a group photo. No shocking images, no scenes of suffering, just an ordinary gathering photo where no one even looks at the camera. So in this photo, what's shocking is actually every single person in this photo is a former political prisoner, most with a sentence exceeding 10 years. And the child in the bottom right corner is Huang Shihong himself, the artist. So when we view them only as victims, we often forgot that they're actually living and breathing, loving human beings. For example, these victims, these so-called victims, were actually just the uncles and aunties who gave Shihong his envelope, red envelopes during the New Year's celebration. During the installation period, Xu Hong came to say hello to me and told me that we had actually participated in the same reading group in Taipei, but never exchanged words. I laughed and said, decades ago, that alone might have been enough to land us in prison. What I mean is, while faithfully reflecting history is certainly important when facing transitional justice, the autonomy of artistic creation lies in one's attitude, and laughter should not be a taboo. Here I quote from a German theorist, highlighting the multiple meanings of laughter. So this basically concludes my main point today, that laughter doesn't necessarily represent being careless, nor does seriousness necessarily signify justice. So this wounded and still lovable country, having gone through such history, not allows me the freedom to share with you with my experience executing the Biennale today, or to freely participate in a reading group with Xu Hong. In that sense, I think that perhaps the freedom to laugh is exactly the most magnificent legacy these political prisoners have left us. So that basically concludes my sharing, and thank you for your listening, and I look forward to any kind of response and question.
Thank you very much, Che-Wei. Well, first of all, great presentation. Very visual, very nice, very easy to follow, and with a lot of insight now on the installation proposed in the Biennale. So it's been very, like for me that I haven't seen yet, the Green Island Biennale has been very, very inspiring, no? And I really want to visit Taiwan as soon as possible, and especially Green Island, and see it with my own eyes, because it looks very interesting. And I hope also to ask you something maybe later about all this project. But thank you very much. Now we can first proceed with Enya, maybe, and see her presentation. And after that, we can start with a question again. I remember that we can, you can leave your question in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, but after Enya presentation. So I can see that Enya already shared with us the presentation. I also had the pleasure to meet Enya during my last visit in Taiwan, actually in the Res Artists Conference. It's where I met all of them, basically. And Enya is also very expert about art residencies in Taiwan, and actually helped me a lot to better understanding this panorama in the island. She is a student of Graduate Institute of Arts Management and Cultural Policy at the National Taiwan University of Art, and she's also a member right now of the Taiwan Association of Cultural Policy Studies. What's more important, she worked for also Bamboo Curtain Studio and Treasure Hill Artist Village, which are for me very important art spaces for my research. So I'm also always very curious to know more about her experience and about her knowledge. And well, I'm going to give you space for your presentation now. Man-Chun, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, international friends. My name is Man-Chun. You can also call me Enya. My presentation is titled Exploring the Function and Values of Artist in Residency Institution, a case study of Treasure Hill Artist Village in Taipei. For those unfamiliar with artist residencies, I often describe them as the artist equivalent of an exchange student program. Each institution typically covers the costs for artists from their own country, while also accepting both local and international applicants who apply by themselves. As Roberto mentioned, I worked at both Bamboo Curtain Studio and Treasure Hill Artist Village before. giving me experience in both privately run and publicly funded residencies. At both sites, I was involved in residency coordination as well as outreach and public relations. Okay, so this is my table of contact for today. According to Trisha Snell, many early artist colonies in the US were private estate, and for a long time, only places like McDowell and Yaddo accept artists without family connections. Building on that, I consider this shift the introduction of open applications and selection processes as a turning point that marks the beginning of what I define as contemporary artist residency institutions. So in my study, I focus on institutions with a stable structure, a clear mission to support artistic creation, and selection mechanism beyond invitation. So programs that are ad hoc, closed, or tied to teaching roles are not included. Here comes the core question of my research. First, what makes artist residency professionally distinct from other cultural institutions? Second, how do the governance and local context of Churchill Artist Village shape how it functions? And third, given its specific history and settings, what kinds of cornerstone or supporting system is Churchill best suited to develop? To answer this question, I use three methods: literature analysis, archival research, and semi-structured interviews. Okay, so to understand how artist residency have evolved, I've identified four historical trajectories driven by two key forces. Institutional-led models operate through top-down planning. The academy and salon system serves state academic goals, while urban cultural strategy programs like DRRDA or CITE focus on city branding and cultural diplomacy. And artist-led models emerge from bottom-up initiatives. Art colonies like McDowell and Bǎodǎo are grounded in shared artistic ideals, while social engagement model like artist placement group emphasize collective experimentation and community involvement. And this framework isn't static. Institution can move between quadrants. This helps us recognize how institution historical backgrounds, power structures, and priorities shape artistic practice, while also revealing opportunity for strategic reposition. Okay. So when we look across Asia, only Taiwan and Japan have introduced dedicated cultural policy framework that specifically support the operation of AIR institutions. And in most other countries, support is typically given either directly to individual artists or more broadly to art organizations without recognizing artist residency as a distinct institutional type. And I think there's one big difference between Taiwan and Japan is the idea of equal cost sharing. In Japan, the policy says that both the Japanese side and the overseas partner should pay the same amount. And Taiwan used to have that too, but we took it out in 2019. And why? Because it makes cooperation harder. Since not every country gives money to their institutions, so asking them to pay the same could mean they just can't join. And here, I've outlined the developmental history of artist residency in Taiwan. So looking back at the development in Taiwan, it was initially driven by central government in the 1990s through national level planning and early international engagement. In the early 2000s, Taipei City, as the first local government with a dedicated Department of Cultural Affairs, took the lead in constructing AR program. Local governments benefit from the central government's revitalization of ideal spaces policies. Policy which help many public institutions secure venues, but also lead some of prioritize park operation over artist residency programs. From 2009, the central government began providing funding support, focus first on infrastructure while continuing to reference this revitalization framework. It wasn't until the Ministry of Cultural Affairs was established in 2012 that policies began to place more professional expectation on residency institutions. As noted earlier, AR Taipei program is the earliest public funded artist residency program in Taiwan and among the first artist residency initiatives to be established in my country. So AR Taipei we used to run 3 different sites. The 2 were acquired through the revitalization policy. So after 2023, only Treasure Hill is left. Okay, let me briefly introduce Treasure Hill. Treasure Hill went through a period of urban development and preservation struggles during which local activists and cultural groups fought to protect it. Eventually, it transformed into an artisan residency site in 2010, and today the village remains home to 18 original residents. And Treasure Hill is now classified as a cultural heritage settlement cluster. It's the first of its kind officially recognized in Taiwan. That means it is protected under the Cultural Heritage Preservation Act, which provides a degree of long-term security for site operations. And Treasure Hill Artist Village is commissioned by the Department of Cultural Affairs, Taipei City Government, and managed by the Taipei Cultural Foundation. Is a publicly funding foundation. Under Taiwan's Foundation Act, this means that over 50% of its funding comes from government or public donors. In 2024, Treasure Hill total operating budget was about 1.28 million euros. More than 90% of this come from the Taipei City Department of Cultural Affairs via funding to the Taipei Cultural Foundation. And this money is mainly used for facility maintenance and staff salaries. In addition, Treasure Hill received 57,000 euros from the Ministry of Cultural Operational Support Program, and is currently the maximum allowed under this central level scheme. As a municipally operated unit, AR Taipei is eligible for both city and national funding, reflecting the institutional advantage in accessing multiple public resources. So based on my interview with 6 international residency artists from 2023 to 2025, I found a expectation reality gap. So artists expect professional creative environments and artistic autonomy and professional network, but they encounter facility issues in this hillside settlement. And also time pressure with exhibition proposal due by week 2 and inadequate institutional support. So artists come expecting a career transforming opportunity and peer supportive environment, but found themselves in a municipal tool serving multiple agendas. And why does this happen? Government official explicitly told me that Treasure Hill must serve tourism, community engagement, and heritage preservation, because they need tourists to justify the budget, and they want well-known artists for branding. So during the interview, I noticed that the term community strategically shift between referring to original residents and neighborhoods and tourists and even local businesses. And I think the core problem is that artist residency in Taipei lack enough venues to accommodate different type of artists. And the only remaining site, which is Treasure Hill, functions entirely as a municipal implementing unit rather than an autonomous arts institution. So according to other residency directors and policymaker interview, publicly run programs are increasingly shaped by tourism logic rather than artistic need. And Treasure Hill pioneering role is being eroded as more institutions adopt similar international exchange models. And after Taipei Artist Village, the city center site was closed as part of the city's urban renewal plan. The program, the AR program, was key to connect with Taiwan's arts scene. With the new director's team, was assigned to manage two nearby heritage village, nearby Treasure Hill Artist Village, without a corresponding increase of staff capacity. So Air Taipei, they lost their most strategic location while gaining more heritage preservation duties with almost the same resources. So in contrast, many privately run and also artist-led residency without the constraint of municipal agendas are increasingly driven. And most of them are founded, also operated by artists, which gives them, I think, a stronger tie to artistic communities. And some are even able to provide with daily fee to artists. The maximum eligible amount from the central government grant is approximately 23 euros per day. Through actual amount, may vary depending on the institution's financial capacity, but comparison, Treasure Hill offers only approximately 292 euros in material support, and only to those artists who agree to participate in exhibitions. Okay, so how do residencies create the right condition for art making or research? I think that's where the idea of the chronotope help us understand more. Okay, so Jingling uses Bakhtin's concept of chronotope to examine how residency organize time and space and how this structure affects artistic productions. He outlined 4 types of chronotope. Like my chronotope refers to remote, quiet location where artists can retreat and focus inward. Network chronotope is based in urban and in where artists are visible but also under social pressure. And we have outer chronotope. It is thematic. Artists engage with politics, science, or ecology, often working with so-called the other, and there's embedding chronotope. It is long-term or even permanent, where artists become part of local community. So let's go back to how space and time are treated in Gillen's model. I think in this framework, space is framed as a site for encountering the other, whether through themes, locations, or embodied experience. Space here is seen as a vehicle for encounter, but when it comes to time, I think that's a missed opportunity because Gillen somewhat pushes the crucial dimension of temporality back onto the art's individual interpretation. So what's missing here is a deeper engagement with the relationship between time and space. And I'd like to share a case of an artist I once hosted. She's a calligrapher named Haruna Tsunuki. Her residency project focused on her mother's family, who were evacuated from Okinawa to Taiwan during World War II. And during her stay, we worked with the National Taiwan Museum, searching through all available records relating to the Okinawa evacuee survey. And though in the end, we couldn't find any specific trace of her family in the archive. But to me, that doesn't mean the project failed, because art is never only about representing truth. It also carries the power of fiction. And in Haluna's case, her experience of present-day Taiwan became a way to revisit the past. It's a process of temporal reconstruction. And here, memory is not a linear accumulation of historical facts, but something reassembled through embodied presence. So this reflects how memory works not as a fixed archive, but as what Braxton calls a cone of memory. It's a layer of structure where the past is reactivated through the present. So I bring this into a dialogue with the PPPP model. Is an idea from design thinking. Possible, plausible, probable, and preferable, to show how artists navigate overlapping timelines. And the goal is not only to recall, but to imagine. Okay, so the residency site become a kind of ground zero where events unfold and where memory in embodiment and the imagination of time are reawakened. Okay, so let's return to the free research question I posed at the beginning. So first, regarding to the intrinsic value and the professional role of artist residencies, I think unlike museums, which are object-centered, artist residency are people-centered institutions built to support the artists, and the core value lies in mobility and experimentation. They are designed to remove barrier to artist movement across geography, disciplines, and cultures, such as founding visas and access to local networks. And residency emphasize process over outcome, enabling artists to explore, experiment, and research freely. And And second, I think Treasure Hill's governance structure reflects a very different logic. It is not treated as an arm's length body, but rather as a municipal tool expecting to fulfill multiple roles. And this kind of governments undermine the autonomy of as a professional arts institution and dilute its capacity to support artistic creation. And I propose that Tragicule should develop as an outer cornucopia, because the site historical complexity with layered with military settlement, informal housing, and heritage preservation embodies marginalized the others' experience. So this geographic position on the city's engaged and riverbank offers sensory experience distinct from mainstream urban environment. Okay. Okay. So I think Tragicule should imagine the development of thematic residency programs focus on topics such as historical memory or heritage. Okay, so hi, should I stop? Because the time.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Okay. And I have to activate the microphone. Okay.
Because should I continue or okay? Because it's about the end.
Yeah, they've seen the thank you slide and then it disappeared. So we weren't sure. Okay, thank you, Man-Chun. For the presentation.
Here's my references. Yeah.
Let's see that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions also for you. Very interesting to see all the complex framework of the art residencies in Taiwan. Because she cannot see me from there, no? Okay. Sorry, they were working, navigating through two devices, and it was a little bit difficult. So I have some questions for both of you. Maybe I can start. With my question if you think it's appropriate, because I really enjoyed both presentations, and I have a lot of questions about all of this now. First of all, I would like to ask Che-Wei a little bit more about his experience in the Biennale in Green Island. It was a wonderful project, no? What really interested me lately, I've been, well, you also know because we've been talking about this in Taiwan, about the role of these peripheral territories, no, in Taiwan contemporary narrative. And I've seen that there are more and more projects from the archipelagos around Taiwan focusing on rewrite Taiwanese contemporary art history. No, we can see Green Island by Biennale. We can see the Matsu Art Biennale that is going on. Well, there was the open call right now, no, for contributions. But I also mentioned Jinmen before. So my question also is, what is the role right now of these peripheral, let's say peripheral territories among the macro narrative of contemporary Taiwan? No? It feels like it's been overlooked for a while, and now they're kind of being rediscovered maybe, or they're getting more importance into the narrative of Greater Taiwan. I don't know if you have any idea about this or any thought about this.
I think it's a very insightful perspective, and actually, I think it's not only in Taiwan. From our curatorial team's perspective, we'd say it's a phenomena surrounding what we call the first chain during the Cold War period, which the U.S. allies tried to stop the communist power. I mean, for example, we had a collaboration with South Korea last year in Jeju. They're also having a Biennale in Jeju, focusing on the April 3rd incident, which is also like a collective trauma to the South Koreans. in this Biennale, our chief curator, Nobuo Takamori, especially invited some artists from the Southeast Asia, which shared similarities in historical conditions, including Bùi Công Khanh from Vietnam, which when he knows about this Biennale that we're working on, he actually tried to film a documentary of himself installing in the Green Island, because he wanted to bring this experience back to Vietnam and persuade the government about, or at least bring this up to the Vietnamese art community. Because there's also a island in Vietnam called Quần Đảo, which are also a detention for political dissidents, about their former French colonizers, which they also imprisoned some of the it used to detain these anti-French dissidents. And also in Hong Kong, there's another, it's called Qingzhou, also an island, which translates exactly as Green Island, also in English, which are a detention for Vietnamese refugees. So we can see this, what you said as archipelago, that actually shares this similarity in this post-colonial historical phase. And we're trying to navigate this kind of historical narration through art and creation practices, which is actually a very unique but probably essential form, because it softens the tension when we are trying to deal with this kind of sensitive topics, which relates to different and often differentiated ideologies. So as I mentioned in the presentation, even the former prisoners in Green Island, they don't share unified ideology. There are actually communists, there are some left-wing, even pro-Taiwanese independence activists, and even some are just researchers such as you and me. And so guilty, non-guilty, and guilty in which way, and it all it's all intertwined with each other, which makes this kind of decolonization action becomes super complex, but through the form of art, there's a subtle and a potential narration could be delivered without raising too much conflict in the society. So that's the reason that we, and also the effort of Nobuo, of changing this edition's exhibition title from Art Festival into Biennale. And we're also focusing on human rights rather than white terror. So it becomes a more common and shared experience that we can becomes a transnational, international dialogue between the Southeast and the East Asia region. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you very much, because it's very interesting to see. You can appreciate all of this from your lecture. This deep reading about the specific the specificities, the particular condition of Green Island, and the individuals, no, that they're part, the living part of this Biennale. And I think it's also very interesting what you're saying, no, the role of these peripheral territories. Now it goes, using like Elsa Chen words, it goes beyond commemoration. No, we're not here just to commemorate the past or to pay tribute to the past, but we are here to integrate the stories of these individuals into the main narrative, no, because they're as working as the hegemonic narrative at the same time. So I think it's very, very, very interesting, and I can see this happening not only in Green Island, but in more territories, and actually an approach that is also trying to be a little bit more active in Spain as well. So it's very appropriate nowadays, no? I also find very interesting this relationship with the East Asian and Southeast Asian, no, framework, because Taiwan shares a lot of common history with both East Asian but also Southeast Asian, no, experience historically. And from my recent stay in Taiwan, I can also see that where Taiwan is trying to enhance this connection with more Asian countries around the island, no? We say South Korea, Philippines, even for sure we have so many connections with mainland China, with Hong Kong. So I was also interested to know this framework, this web of connection. It is something that exists even in the field of art residencies. This is for more maybe for Man-Chun, to know if exists a specific network maybe of connection between art residencies in the context of Eastern Asia or Southeast Asia. No? Taiwan has a deep connection maybe with Philippines art residencies or Japanese art residencies. I remember that when I was in Breast Artist Conference to talk with so many cultural workers from Japan and Philippines especially. So I was wondering if there is any kind of network between Taiwan and rest of neighbors countries around the island.
Oh, thanks. Okay, sorry. Because I mean, when it comes to AR Taipei, actually our international, how to say, partners are not specifically based in Asia. We do have one partner from Japan, and one partner from South Korea, and I think that's all. And there's one from Australia, which is close to Taiwan. I mean, yeah. But others are partners from Europe and also in the United States. So I guess that's just because the conference takes place in Taiwan that makes some of the Southeast Asia partners show off. I mean, attend. But we don't really work. I mean, very close with the so-called Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia.
Oh, interesting. Also because I've seen that, for example, from the Res Artist Conference, that I was focused on, personally, I was focused on Spanish and Taiwan connection. We appreciate that Taiwan public programs use a lot the art residencies in foreign countries, to enhance the visibility and exportation of Taiwanese artists. And here in Spain, we have so many examples of art residencies that host annually Taiwanese artists to present their art and to showcase their art here in Spain. And this is happening also in different countries in Europe. Also, another thing that I wanted to ask you related to this was the role of art residencies, especially outside of Taiwan, how they're used to export Taiwanese art. It's still something very popular because it used to be very popular, a way to export Taiwanese art through art residencies in the foreign countries, or now they're looking for different methods, and also what is like the role of foreign artists coming to art residencies in Taiwan, maybe. I don't know if I can listen. No worries.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I missed some of the question.
I was curious to know the relationship that exists between the exportation of Taiwanese art in, for example, Western country through art residencies. So the role of art residencies for exportation of Taiwanese art. And then at the same time, the relationship and the importance of foreign artists coming to Taiwan and staying art residencies in Taiwan. No, what about this interchange between the countries? I see that this is something happening a lot with Western world. No, so United States above all, but I also say Spain, for example, and then we have, for example, England as well, or Germany. So just curious to know if you have any thought about this.
As I mentioned, I think because some of the institution, I mean, most of the institution around Asia didn't get the fund from the government. So I think they cannot, how to say, take care of their artists with financial support, but they do very well on networking, like cooperate with other communities. Those are not related to politic issue. I mean, the real communities, the local communities, and I'll say, yeah, no, I think that's all.
Thank you. Any question here? Yeah.
Yes. Hi. I have a question for Che-Wei. Well, thank you very much for both of you for your presentations. It was very interesting to know about this Green Island Biennale. I didn't know about it. And I was wondering actually about the specific role of the artist, how difficult it could be to manage to talk about such a traumatic event, no, as the detention center, without monopolizing the narrative, no, without appropriating someone else's narrative, even if it's, of course, a national part of the cultural heritage, no, the specific historical period. But yeah, how is this relationship, and also the difficulty of not bringing these political elements into a only aesthetical field, right? No, this risk we always have as artists, as curators, historians, of aestheticizing something which makes part of real life, no? So what are your views on this topic? Thank you.
It's a question that we ask ourselves a lot during the curatorial process. I think besides from the theoretical framework that you just mentioned, actually curating on the Green Island is actually a challenge from a technical perspective also, meaning that it's basically doing an exhibition. I mean the difficulty of making an exhibition on the island is actually quite similar, I'd say, even harder to do an exhibition abroad, because we need to ship all the materials, all of the equipment that we needed, all of the devices, TVs, speakers onto the island, which means that we need to have a very specific understanding of what we're gonna present on the island. so that we can prepare beforehand rather than we are on the island, then we need to ship materials again from Taiwan. So actually, although there's no like a official procedure from the museum that they're doing inspection of the artworks, we still need to like keep tracking the process that the artists are doing throughout the whole year of preparation. So some of the artists are more like they're more into site survey and like historical researches through reading materials and stuff. But the others are more like how can I put it? More experimental, which meaning they'll try to navigate a new form of narration by themselves, which doesn't necessarily matches with like the actual incidents that that happened during that period of time. So, for example, there's one artist that made made a cooking television show in this edition, which focuses on the everyday household rather than the White Terror, those obvious victims under the White Terror regime. This artist focused more on the women's like condition in this hierarchy, like a male dominance hierarchy in the society, so that he invited a drag queen to mimic this TV cooking show's host, and did some of the Taiwanese cuisine, which it was actually there was actually this television show once in like 30 years ago, which last like for like I remember like over 3,000 episodes, and she actually taught more than 4,000 cuisines to the Taiwanese people. But that TV show is actually the first and only TV program that is not news nor variety during that time before the lift of martial law. So this artist focuses more on this kind of like a common condition of the citizens in Taiwan, but not necessarily relates the art to one specific survivors or inmates or historical incidents. But the artwork itself still relates to this historical period and its narration. And another strategy that we use is, as I mentioned, is about how does the international artists can provide their insight when they're doing comparison between their country's own injustice history with Taiwan. And often, for example, the Vietnamese artist and the Hong Kongese artist, like in general, they are like kind of difficult to show their artworks within their own country at the status quo. But by this international biennale, we try to form a stage that these kind of dialogues can happen, and through these re-examination of these collective trauma sometimes they'll spark some cool ideas along the way. So, for example, we had a Taiwanese artist that films about, she took some photographs from Vietnam's Quang Dao and Taiwan's Green Island, and she juxtaposed different photographs together. But at first sight, you cannot tell the difference between the two. In a very common photography installation, which Vietnam and Taiwan does not necessarily need had a connection within that period. But actually, during the opening day, one victim came to me and said that during his imprisonment in the Green Island in the 1960s, Vietnamese government actually sent a troop of people to Green Island and to learn from them how to manage a concentration camp and so on, so that they can bring this kind of method back to Vietnam and do their own concentration camp. So that kind of context, or that kind of historical context, is actually beyond the artist's intention, but it will like emerge maybe from the eyes of the audience, especially from the victims.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Che-Wei. Very, very good answer, and something a little bit also, well, not new to us, but also to reply to Shang-Yu question in the group, in the chat box. I think here in Spain, we don't have such an example of art initiatives that address like this to the political trauma of the dictatorship.
There's a lack of...
we literally suffer, yeah.
Maybe in independent places, spaces such as the ones, the kind of places Sara was talking about here in Spain, maybe, there has been people addressing this kind of subjects. But it's true that from the cultural authorities, the ministers, etc., in my opinion, there's not really an addressing of the historical memory here in Spain. I think it's a pendant subject.
Yeah. It's something that
I was also all of this history reminds me of Asinara Island back in Sardinia, which was also a detention camp. No, this what Che-Wei was talking about, no, that many countries use islands, no, so as a detention center.
That's prison.
In Italy, also in Sardinia, I was imagining this kind of Biennale back in Asinara. Would be interesting.
Would be interesting. Yeah. It's something that very often happens. No, the highlands are brutally transformed into prisons because it's the most difficult places where you can escape from. No, how can you escape from a remote island? It's quite impossible. So yeah, but in Spain, I think we still miss this, and this actually kind of connect to the question that Ana Paloma left in the chat box, no? Because we still have quite a complex time with the political trauma in Spain. And also, Paloma, want to ask you, Che-Wei, how well do you think that Taiwan's government is doing when engaging with artists victims of political trauma? Because she says, if I understand correctly, the White Terror Museum is being widely criticized by them, and it doesn't align with their feeling and views.
That's a tricky question.
Yeah.
I think I can't speak of like the general public, but for my personal experience, there's one very like unique unique characteristic that I noticed during the execution of this Biennale is that I'm not sure if you guys know, but like the main two parties in Taiwan are DPP and KMT. And since like KMT is like what to blame of the White Terror, whenever the KMT is in charge, they cut the Human Rights Museum's budget. That seems reasonable and like understandable, but what is not that easy to digest to me is that if you look back of like maybe the elections geopolitical map on the Green Island, maybe for the past 20 years, you'll notice that they are still pretty much pro-KMT. Because those who are not KMT at that period of time wouldn't still be on the island. And that is the legacy which left behind. And some of them are even staffs of the museums themselves. So we would think of like the Human Rights Museum must be like pro-DPP, and they must be like had a certain political like stance, but actually the reality is more complex than that. And you mentioned about the general public's opinion about the White Terror and stuff. I think although it is a quite common topic in the art and cultural industry, but it is not that common in the general public. Despite there's been several revision of the textbook during our like education process, so that actually my for example myself, I wasn't that familiar with this Taiwanese history before executing the Green Island, or before I started to work as a cultural worker in the industry. But it is I would regard these as a chance for me to like understand more and to do more research about this history and try to understand what are these people trying to discuss about, and what does these victims that I've been through, and also what does different parties and different people arguments are about. So I think it is like in Nobuo's words, he would say the Green Island Biennale is something in progress. The best or the ideal status of the Biennale is that it no longer needs to exist, because it becomes a common sense, or it means that Taiwanese people have gained a consensus in itself that the art Biennale, or like talking about this collective trauma, no longer has its we no longer need this to achieve that.
Yeah. This is very brilliant conclusion, because it's true, no? While we're still addressing to these issues, and while we still like highlight, no, this wound in the society and the history, it means that we didn't address properly through our narratives, no? And it is something that Well, it happens in any country. I can say that in Spain it's still happening, and in Italy, where I'm from, it's even worse, the situation. We don't address at all to our traumatic past, and that leads to very big political problems than in recent days. But yeah, it's very interesting, and actually it's very interesting, this contrast between maybe the cultural discourse, the cultural narrative that you can try to create from a biennale, from a museum, from an institution, and then the perception from the general public, And that's something that I'm also very interested in since I've been researching Taiwan, This view from the Taiwanese people for their past, and also especially for their political past, Because for me at first it was quite impressive that a political party like KMT was able to preserve their hegemony, in the political discourse of Taiwan, even after a martial law that was imposed by the KMT. They really changed, in order to preserve their hegemony. And the first for me was quite shocking, but then knowing more about the history of Taiwan, and also the perception of the general public, to understand that it's very different, Also ways to operate in the public sector than the one we had, for example, or the history we share in Spain or in Italy. So every country is very different, their history and their specificities. So that's why exhibition like this, Green Island or Matsu or Jinmen are very important, to help to recreate a new narrative that addresses the issues. And the same in Spain, and this kind of initiative starting in peripheral, more free, let's say, territories and landscape that needs to be more highlighted. It's when you can really stress, the hegemonic narrative. Very, very interesting. I don't know if there is any more question from the public, especially connected from the call. If you would like to add something else, I also share in the chat box the email of the seminar. If you want to write us, if you want to have more information about the speakers, or even the contact of the speakers, as well as the link to the videos that we share. The first is from Shang-yu. No, the first one actually is from Che-Wei from the Biennial, and the second one is from Shang-yu from Taiwan. But yeah, I don't know if there is any more question pending. Very good. Perfecto. Well, in that case, maybe we're gonna proceed to close the session. At the end, well, we can do to everyone, also to Shang-yu and Sara that is behind here. It was very interesting to have such a different as well, perspective about Taiwanese contemporary art and Taiwanese projects nowadays. Oh, such a beautiful kitty. Oh, so cute. It would deserve a spot in the program, in the schedule. So nice. But yeah, it was very nice to have you guys with us, to share with you your research, your experience. You know that I am looking forward to know more about what all of you are doing in Taiwan. And especially, I really hope to host you very soon to Spain in person, and we can share in person all these topics that we share today, mostly online. For the other people that are connected here, I just wanted to say that this is hopefully the first edition of this seminar that we hopefully continue next year from our research group from Complutense University of Madrid. Next year, we're going to organize with more time ahead and more budget in order to do a better event, and especially hosting people in person. So if you're interested even in collaboration, even if you know more about this event and about our research group, you can contact with us through the email that I left in the chat box. I would like to say thanks especially to all the guests for their comprehension, for the patience, for being available, and to be very flexible with time in the presentation. I think it's been a wonderful experience, and I take a lot of notes for my own research. So I hope it's been the same also for you guys. So yeah, no, I think maybe it's time to say goodbye if there's no any more other question. Thank you very much again, and I hope you can have a beautiful rest of the evening. Thank you. Okay, shall I close? I'm gonna close. I don't know. Okay, that's it. Sometimes I need a little bit of feedback.
No quitaste todavía.